There's a quiet hum beneath the surface of many lives, a subtle, persistent feeling that something is just not quite right. It's the whisper that tells us we're not good enough, not smart enough, not lovable enough. It's the ache that drives us to constantly chase something more, something better, something that promises to finally fill the void. We wake up with it, a heavy blanket of inadequacy that no amount of success, no amount of praise seems to lift. We nod along to conversations, smile when we're expected to, but inside, that little voice is always there, critiquing, comparing, finding us wanting. It's in the way we hesitate to speak our truth, the way we second-guess our decisions, the way we shrink back from vulnerability. This feeling isn't a sudden storm, it's more like a pervasive mist, a constant damp chill that seeps into everything. We might overwork, trying to prove our worth through achievement. We might people-please, desperately seeking external validation to silence the inner critic. We might isolate ourselves, believing our flaws are too visible, too damning. It's in the moments we scroll through social media, seeing curated lives that appear effortlessly perfect, and feeling that familiar pang of falling short. It's in the moments we replay conversations, dissecting every word, convinced we said the wrong thing, presented ourselves poorly. It's even in the quiet moments alone, when the distractions fade and that core feeling of not enough rises to the surface, demanding acknowledgement. This isn't about a specific failure or a particular setback. It's a deeper, more ingrained belief about who we are at our core. It's the invisible weight of past disappointments, of perceived rejections, of unfulfilled expectations, all woven together into a narrative of scarcity. We look at ourselves, our lives, our struggles, and we see only what's missing. We carry this burden into every interaction, every opportunity, every relationship. It shapes our choices, our reactions, our very perception of reality. If we believe we are not enough, then every interaction is a test, every challenge a confirmation of our inadequacy. We become experts at finding evidence to support this internal narrative, overlooking the moments of joy, the acts of kindness, the strengths we possess. It's a paradox, isn't it? We desperately want to be accepted, to be loved, to feel complete, but this very feeling of not enough pushes people away, makes us hide our true selves, and prevents us from truly embracing the love that is already present in our lives. We are caught in a cycle, seeking external solutions for an internal sense of lack, and the more we seek outside ourselves, the more elusive that feeling of sufficiency becomes. It's in these moments, when the ache is most present, that we might hear a different kind of whisper, a call to look inward, not to find more flaws, but to find a different way of seeing. But before we can truly understand that, we must first acknowledge the depth of this pervasive ache and how it shapes our every experience. This is why the past cannot hold you, but if the past has no weight, what about the constant stream of thoughts in the present? In the next section, we'll see why the Buddha taught that thoughts are like clouds, always drifting. And before we dive deeper into these teachings, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Wisdom like this is easy to miss in the noise of life, but if this video found you, it was meant to. Now let's begin. We spend so much energy trying to fix ourselves, don't we? We see the perceived flaws, the anxieties, the habits that don't serve us, and we launch into a campaign of personal improvement. We buy self-help books, attend workshops, download meditation apps, all with the hopeful intention of becoming a better version of ourselves. But what if the very act of trying to fix ourselves is the root of the problem? What if we're approaching our own minds and hearts like broken machines that need repair, rather than as living, breathing, constantly changing experiences? This mindset, this drive to mend that which we perceive as fractured, is a powerful engine for suffering. Think about it. When we label something about ourselves as broken, we're already creating a division. There's the good us that we aspire to be, and the bad us that needs fixing. This creates a subtle war within, a constant battle against our own perceived imperfections. We become so focused on eradicating the bad that we lose sight of the whole. It's like trying to force a wilting flower to bloom by constantly picking at its petals. The intention might be good, to help it flourish, but the method is misguided. The flower needs sunlight, water, and proper soil, not forceful intervention. Similarly, our minds and hearts need a different kind of nourishment, a different approach entirely. This pervasive sense of not enough we discussed often fuels this fixing impulse. We believe that once we've eliminated the anxiety, perfected our relationships, or achieved a certain level of success, then and only then will we be worthy, will we be fixed. But this is where the illusion lies. The goalposts are always moving. We might feel a brief sense of satisfaction when we manage to curb a particular habit or quiet a specific worry. But soon enough, another perceived flaw emerges, another area for improvement, and the cycle of self-scrutiny begins anew. It's an exhausting pursuit because it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of our true nature. The Buddhist teachings don't encourage us to eradicate our thoughts or emotions, nor do they suggest we need to become someone we're not. Instead, they invite us to profoundly see what is already present, without judgment, without the need for repair. This is where the shift begins, from trying to fix ourselves to simply observing ourselves. When we stop trying to fix what feels broken, we create space. Space for self-acceptance, space for self-compassion, and most importantly, space for seeing things as they truly are. The very label of broken is a story we tell ourselves, a narrative that keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-criticism. Consider the mind. It's a constantly flowing stream of thoughts, sensations, and emotions. Trying to stop this stream or channel it into a perfectly straight line is like trying to stop a river. It's futile and ultimately exhausting. Instead, what if we learn to float on the river, to observe the currents, to understand its nature? The urge to fix often stems from a desire for control, a fear of what might happen if we don't constantly manage ourselves. But this control is an illusion. True peace doesn't come from mastering ourselves into a perfect state, but from surrendering to the present moment as it is, with all its apparent imperfections. This surrender is not resignation, it's a profound act of wisdom. So instead of asking, how can I fix myself? The wiser question might be, how can I understand myself? This subtle shift in inquiry opens the door to a different path, a path of radical self-acceptance, which is the very foundation of genuine transformation. True change arises not from trying to repair ourselves, but from understanding the nature of our experience. This understanding, however, requires us to look deeper than our immediate thoughts and feelings, to see what lies beneath the surface of our perceived imperfections. And beneath all pain, a stillness is waiting to be discovered. When we feel pain, whether it's emotional or physical, our immediate instinct is to push it away, to escape it, to make it stop. We grab for distractions, numb ourselves with busyness, or sink into negative rumination, all in an effort to avoid that uncomfortable sensation. We've been conditioned to believe that pain is something to be eradicated, a sign that something has gone terribly wrong. But what if pain in its essence isn't the enemy? What if it's simply a signal, a message from our experience that's trying to get our attention? Buddhist wisdom suggests that underneath the surface waves of our emotional turbulence, there exists a profound stillness, a deep wellspring of peace that is always present, regardless of our outer circumstances or inner turmoil. This stillness isn't an absence of feeling. It's not a state of apathy or detachment in the sense of not caring. Rather, it's the fundamental awareness that witnesses all feelings, all thoughts, all sensations, without being consumed by them. It's the vast, open sky that holds all the clouds, no matter how dark or stormy they might appear. When we encounter pain, we tend to identify with it. We say, "I am in pain," as if the pain is our identity, as if it defines us. This identification is what amplifies the suffering. We then try to fix ourselves, to eliminate the pain, which often involves a struggle against our own direct experience. This struggle is the real source of our distress. The teachings offer a different path, to lean into the pain, not to embrace it with masochism, but to meet it with curiosity and gentle attention. When we stop fighting what is already here, when we cease the internal battle to make the pain disappear, something remarkable happens. The energy we were expending on the struggle is released, and we begin to notice the space that surrounds the pain. Imagine a powerful wave crashing on the shore. The water churns, it's loud, it's forceful. But observe the ocean bed beneath the waves. It remains calm, undisturbed. Our minds are like that ocean. The thoughts and emotions are the waves, but the underlying awareness, the true self, is the ocean bed. This stillness is not a destination to be reached through effort. It's not something you achieve after years of strenuous practice, although practice can help reveal it. It's always here, like the screen on which a movie plays. The movie changes, happy scenes, sad scenes, action scenes, but the screen itself remains unchanged. The mistake we make is believing that the movie is the screen. We get so caught up in the drama of our thoughts and feelings that we forget the fundamental awareness that is experiencing it all. This forgotten awareness is the stillness that awaits us. To find this stillness, we begin by simply observing. When a painful thought arises, instead of immediately trying to push it away or analyze it, we can gently acknowledge it. There is sadness, or there is anxiety. We notice the physical sensations that accompany it. Where is the tightness in the chest? Where is the knot in the stomach? We meet these sensations with a sense of gentle inquiry rather than resistance. This is not about approving of the pain or liking it. It's about recognizing its impermanent nature. Just as the waves rise and fall, just as the clouds drift across the sky, so too do our emotions and thoughts arise and pass away. When we hold them with open awareness, we allow them to do just that, to pass. The suffering comes not from the pain itself, but from our resistance to it, our demand that it should not be. When we can rest in the awareness that holds even the most difficult experiences, we discover a profound resilience, a deep wellspring of peace that is invulnerable to the storms of life. It is this discovery that allows us to see past the apparent brokenness of our lives. But to access this, we must understand that this inherent calm is not something we have to earn or achieve, it is our very nature. This is why Buddha nature is not earned, but is the very ground of our being. There's a beautiful, yet often misunderstood concept in Buddhism, Buddha nature, the idea that we in our most fundamental essence are already awakened, already complete, already pure. This isn't a future goal to strive for, or a prize to be won through arduous practice. It's the inherent quality of our being, like the sun's ability to shine, even when hidden by clouds. This realization can be profoundly unsettling, especially to those of us who have grown up believing that worthiness must be earned. We are taught from a young age that achievement, good behavior, and constant effort are the currency of value. We dedicate our lives to proving ourselves, to becoming someone better, someone who deserves happiness and peace. But Buddha nature suggests the opposite. It whispers that the very thing we're searching for, worthiness, peace, enlightenment, is not an acquisition, but a recognition of what's already here. It's like trying to earn the sky. The sky is already vast, boundless, and present. You don't do anything to make it so, you simply recognize its existence. This concept challenges the very foundation of our self-identity, which is often built upon layers of achievement, social roles, and personal narratives. We identify with our jobs, our relationships, our skills, and our perceived shortcomings. We believe that if we can just fix the shortcomings and perfect the others, we'll finally arrive at that state of being good enough. But Buddha nature points to a reality that precedes all these accumulations. It's the awareness that witnesses you scrolling through this video, the awareness that noticed the ache of not enough, the awareness that felt the pain we just discussed. This awareness is not created by your actions. It is the space in which all actions, all feelings, all thoughts arise. The implication of this teaching is immense. If Buddha nature is inherent, then we don't need to strive to become enlightened. We simply need to uncover the layers of illusion that obscure our innate awareness. These layers are the habits of mind that tell us we are flawed, that we are separate, that we must earn our place in the world. Think of a diamond buried in the mud. The diamond is not made of mud. Its inherent brilliance is not diminished by the dirt that covers it. Our task is not to create a diamond, but to lovingly and patiently clean away the mud. The mud represents our conditioned patterns, our fears, our self-criticisms. This is why trying to fix ourselves is often a futile endeavor. We're trying to mend a perfectly whole thing, like trying to add more water to the ocean. The effort itself becomes another obscuration. The energy spent on self-improvement, when it comes from a place of self-rejection, only reinforces the idea that something is fundamentally wrong. Instead, the path opens when we shift our focus from fixing to recognizing, from striving to becoming to allowing. It means seeing our every thought, our every emotion, not as evidence of our brokenness, but as temporary manifestations within the unchanging field of awareness. When we can look at our anxieties, our anger, our moments of doubt, and recognize that these are not the essence of who we are, but passing clouds in the vast sky of our mind, then we are beginning to recognize our Buddha nature. It's the profound realization that the light within us hasn't gone out, it's never gone out, it's just been veiled. This recognition doesn't mean we suddenly become perfect. It means we see our inherent perfection as the ground of our experience, including all our apparent imperfections. The journey is not about adding something to ourselves, but about uncovering and trusting the wisdom, the compassion, and the clarity that are already present. And to truly see this, we must understand that our mind often creates problems as a way to engage with its own nature. It sounds almost paradoxical, doesn't it? That the very instrument we use to navigate the world, our mind, could be the author of its own perpetual motion, its own cycles of seeking and striving. We often operate under the assumption that problems are external forces that invade our peace. Yet the Buddhist perspective, particularly through the lens of how the mind functions, reveals a subtler truth. The mind often creates a problem simply to have something to solve. This isn't to say that external difficulties don't exist. Life is replete with challenges. However, much of our subjective suffering, the churning anxieties and persistent dissatisfactions, originates from the mind's own habitual patterns. It's like an artist who is so engrossed in the act of creation that they sometimes smear the canvas with paint, only to then dedicate themselves to cleaning that specific smudge. The original act of smearing becomes the very problem they then need to address. Consider the feeling of boredom or restlessness. When we're not actively engaged in something, the mind often conjures up a sense of unease. It might then spin a narrative about what's wrong with not being busy or what we should be doing, thereby creating the problem of dissatisfaction. Once this problem is manufactured, the mind then seeks a solution, a distraction, a task, an activity to alleviate the discomfort it originally co-created. This pattern is deeply ingrained. We strive for goals, achieve them, and then immediately set new, often more ambitious goals. The satisfaction of achieving the previous goal is fleeting because the mind has already generated the next perceived problem, the next gap to fill, the next aspiration to chase. This constant striving, this perpetual cycle of problem creation and problem solving, keeps us from ever truly resting in a state of contentment. The mind is a magnificent instrument of analysis, planning, and foresight. These are vital functions. However, when these functions are not guided by awareness, they can become the source of our most persistent anxieties. We might worry about future scenarios that are unlikely to happen or ruminate on past events that cannot be changed, effectively creating problems that exist only within our cognitive space. These imagined problems then generate real emotional responses: fear, sadness, frustration. This is why simply trying to fix ourselves, as we discussed earlier, can be so problematic. If the mind's habit is to create issues out of its own dynamics, then approaching itself as a problem to be solved is like feeding the very cycle we're trying to break. It's a self-perpetuating loop. The key here is to observe this process without judgment. When we notice ourselves generating a problem, perhaps a worry about what others think or an anxiety about an upcoming event, we can gently acknowledge the mind's activity. The mind is creating a scenario. It's generating a problem to then try and solve. This act of witnessing, of recognizing the mind's game, is the first step in disengaging from it. It's like interrupting a dream. While the dream is happening, it feels entirely real. But the moment you realize you're dreaming, the power it holds diminishes. The Buddha's teachings on mindfulness are essentially about developing this capacity to observe the mind's creations without getting caught up in them. It's about understanding that the thoughts and feelings that arise are impermanent phenomena, like clouds passing through the sky. We don't need to chase every cloud or try to push them away. We can simply watch them drift. When we refrain from identifying with the problems the mind creates and cease the frantic effort to solve them, we begin to experience moments of clarity, of present moment awareness. In these moments, we can see that our true nature is not one of constant struggle or deficiency, but one of inherent completeness. This understanding arises when we examine the nature of our mental constructs. And to truly grasp this, we need to look at an often overlooked analogy that wisdom traditions use to illustrate these points: the parable of the cracked bowl. Imagine holding a beautiful, handcrafted bowl. It's ancient, perhaps passed down through generations. As you look closer, you notice small, hairline cracks marring its surface. A part of you might feel a pang of disappointment, a sense that its perfection is compromised, that its utility is diminished. You might think about trying to fill those cracks, to mend them, to restore it to an imagined state of pristine wholeness. This is often how we relate to ourselves and to life. We see our perceived flaws, our imperfections, our struggles, the cracks in our being, and we immediately judge them. We believe these cracks mean the bowl, and by extension ourselves, are irreparably damaged, or at least significantly less valuable. We then embark on a quest to fix them, to fill them, to hide them away so that others, and more importantly ourselves, don't have to see them. But the parable of the cracked bowl offers a different perspective, rooted in a deeper understanding of existence. What if those cracks are not blemishes, but rather integral parts of the bowl's history, its beauty, its very character? What if, instead of trying to hide them, we learn to see the beauty in them, and to appreciate what can still be held within its imperfect form? In the context of Buddhist wisdom, these cracks represent all the ways we feel we fall short. Our anxieties, our past mistakes, our insecurities, the moments we feel we disappoint ourselves or others. The desire to fill these cracks is the urge to erase these parts of our experience, to become someone smoother, more perfect, more acceptable. This is the constant striving and self-fixing we've been exploring. However, the truly transformative insight comes when we understand that these cracks do not prevent the bowl from being a bowl. It can still hold water, it can still serve its purpose, and its history, etched into its very form, adds a unique depth to its nature. Similarly, our perceived imperfections do not negate our inherent worth or our capacity for experience. When we stop fighting our cracks, when we stop trying to smooth them over or deny their existence, we can begin to appreciate the bowl's functionality and its unique story. We can learn to hold our experiences, even the painful ones, with acceptance. The bowl, despite its cracks, still contains, and perhaps the cracks even allow for a different kind of containing, a more intricate holding. This perspective shifts our focus from trying to achieve a flawless state, which is in itself an illusion, to embracing our reality as it is. It's about recognizing that the journey of life and the personal journey of growth is not about becoming flawless, but about becoming whole, and wholeness includes the broken parts. The Buddha taught that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent and imperfect. This is not a cause for despair, but a profound liberation. If everything is subject to change and imperfection, then our own perceived flaws are simply part of this universal tapestry. Trying to be perfectly smooth and unblemished is like trying to fight the nature of water or air. The cracked bowl, when understood in this light, becomes a symbol of radical self-acceptance. It's a reminder that our vulnerability, our history, our struggles are not defects that need to be hidden or eliminated. They are the very things that make us uniquely ourselves, and when embraced with awareness, they can lead to a deeper, more resilient form of peace. This embrace, however, requires us to confront the deep-seated beliefs that often fuel our sense of inadequacy, and at the root of this feeling is often the belief that we are somehow fundamentally unworthy, the sting of unworthiness. It's a silent, pervasive companion for so many of us. It whispers that we haven't done enough, aren't enough, and will never be enough. We internalize it, letting it shape our self-perception and limit our potential. We try to earn worthiness through achievements, through pleasing others, through constant self-improvement, all while missing the fundamental truth. Unworthiness itself is not an inherent part of our being, but a conditioned thought, a learned response. Think about a newborn. Does a baby arrive with a sense of not being good enough? No, they exist in a state of pure being, completely unconcerned with external validation or internal critique. Their worthiness is not in question. It is simply a given of their existence. It's only as we move through life, absorbing messages from our environment, our families, society, that we begin to construct these limiting beliefs. We learn that certain behaviors are rewarded and others are punished. We see that success is praised and failure is often met with disappointment, either outwardly shown or subtly implied. We internalize these external judgments, and they become our own internal narrative. A single criticism, a perceived rejection, a moment of embarrassment can become the seed of a much larger belief about our fundamental inadequacy. This conditioning can be so deep that we no longer recognize it as learned. It feels like an intrinsic truth about ourselves. Of course I feel unworthy, it's just who I am. But this assumption is a powerful illusion, one that keeps us trapped in a cycle of seeking external approval and self-rejection. When we can begin to see unworthiness as a thought, rather than a fact, the power it holds starts to dissolve. Thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky. They arise, they linger for a time, and then they move on. The sky itself remains vast and unchanged, unaffected by the clouds. Our true nature, our inherent worthiness, is like that unchanging sky. The mind, in its capacity to create narratives, often creates the story of unworthiness. It's a survival mechanism, perhaps, a way to try and protect ourselves from perceived criticism by preemptively criticizing ourselves. Or it's a deeply ingrained pattern inherited from patterns of thought passed down through generations. Whatever its origin, it is not the truth of our essence. To challenge this conditioning, we begin by gently observing these thoughts of unworthiness when they arise. We don't try to fight them or argue with them. We simply notice. There is the thought, I am not good enough. We acknowledge it without fully believing it, without letting it define us. This practice of mindful observation creates a space between ourselves and the thought. In that space, we can begin to see that the thought of unworthiness is just that, a thought. It is not a reflection of reality, but a product of our mental conditioning. And if it's conditioned, it can also be unconditioned. This is where self-compassion becomes essential. Instead of berating ourselves for feeling unworthy, we can offer ourselves the same kindness and understanding we would offer a dear friend who is struggling with such a feeling. We recognize that it's a difficult experience and that many people struggle with it. The illusion of unworthiness is persistent, and often it masquerades as self-awareness or humility. But true humility comes not from self-deprecation, but from a clear-eyed recognition of one's inherent value, alongside the understanding that one is still learning and growing. The belief in unworthiness, however, is a form of self-rejection that actively hinders growth. So the next time that familiar whisper of not enough arises, remember that it's a conditioned thought, a passing cloud. It does not reflect the unchanging sky of your true nature. This recognition is the first step toward embracing a deeper sense of belonging and self-acceptance, but it requires us to see that our self-image is also a construct that obscures this truth. And in the next section, we will explore why you are not your self-image. We all cultivate an image of ourselves, don't we? It's a carefully constructed facade, a persona we present to the world. This self-image can be based on our perceived strengths, our accomplishments, our physical appearance, or even our carefully curated social media presence. It's the story we tell ourselves and others about who we pretend to be or who we are trying to be. This self-image is often deeply intertwined with our sense of worth. We believe that if our self-image is positive, if we are seen as successful, attractive, capable, then we are indeed worthy. Conversely, if our self-image is tarnished, if we perceive ourselves as failures or flawed, we feel diminished in our worth. The problem is our self-image is inherently unstable. It's like trying to build a house on shifting sands. It requires constant maintenance, constant reinforcement. We're always looking for external validation to support it, always trying to manage how others perceive us, always afraid of what might happen if our carefully constructed facade crumbles. This clinging to a self-image is a source of immense suffering. When anything threatens to disrupt it, a criticism, a failure, a moment of vulnerability too raw to conceal, we feel exposed and vulnerable. We might become defensive, lash out, or retreat, all in an effort to protect this fragile construct. But the deeper truth, as revealed by Buddhist teachings, is that you are not your self-image. Your true nature, your core being, is far more vast and resilient than any image you could ever create. The self-image is like a story written in the sand. The ocean of your true self will eventually wash it away. Think of an actor playing a role. The actor might embody the character so convincingly that they start to believe they are the character. But off stage, they are still themselves with their own life, their own experiences, their own true nature. Our self-image is a role we play, and often we forget that we are the actor, not the role. When we understand that we are not our self-image, we begin to loosen the grip of this constant need for approval. We can start to see that our worth is not dependent on maintaining a particular impression. This is incredibly liberating. It means that mistakes, awkward moments, and perceived failures don't diminish our fundamental being. This is where mindfulness practice becomes crucial. Mindfulness allows us to observe our thoughts and feelings, including the thoughts that construct and reinforce our self-image, without fully identifying with them. We can see the I that is worried about what others think, the I that is proud of an achievement, the I that is ashamed of a mistake, not as the definitive self, but as a temporary expression of thought and emotion. When we are not tethered to maintaining a specific self-image, we become more open to new experiences, more willing to take risks, and more capable of genuine connection. We can be present with others without the filter of how we want them to see us. We can also be more present with ourselves, accepting all aspects of our experience, not just the ones that fit our preferred image. The self-image is a form of clinging, and clinging, as we know, is a primary source of suffering. It's what keeps us bound to impermanence, always trying to solidify something that is inherently fluid. By recognizing that you are not your self-image, you begin to untangle yourself from this clinging. This does not mean we stop caring about how we present ourselves or the impact we have on others. It simply means we detach our core sense of worth from the success or failure of these presentations. Our true essence is not on display. It is the unchanging awareness that observes the display. The challenge is to distinguish the perceived self from the true self. This distinction is not intellectual, it's experiential. It arises through patient observation and a willingness to let go of the comfort found in a solid, predictable identity. So, as you navigate your day, consider for a moment, what stories are you telling yourself about who you are? And what if those stories are merely transient images, obscuring the deeper reality of your being? Understanding this illusion is key to dismantling another powerful construct that often fuels our sense of inadequacy, shame. And in the next section, we will explore how shame itself is a form of ego, shame. It's a heavy cloak that many of us wear, often unconsciously. It's that visceral feeling of being fundamentally flawed, bad, or inadequate, and the deep-seated fear that others will discover this truth about us. We might feel shame for our past actions, our perceived weaknesses, our bodies, our thoughts, or simply for existing. While guilt is a healthy response to a specific wrongdoing, a recognition that we have caused harm and a desire to make amends. Shame is different. Shame is not about a specific behavior, it's about the belief that there is something inherently wrong with us. It's an attack on our very being. I did a bad thing, guilt versus I am a bad person, shame. And where does this pervasive feeling of badness originate? It's a powerful manifestation of the ego, that construct of self that we build and defend. The ego thrives on definition, on separation, on having a distinct identity that is separate from others, and often seen as superior or conversely inferior. When the ego perceives any threat to its carefully constructed image, a mistake, a criticism, a moment of exposure, it can generate shame as a defense mechanism or as a consequence of its own judgments. The ego wants to be seen as good, competent, and acceptable. When it fails to meet its own or perceived societal standards, it can turn on itself, condemning the very self it is trying to uphold. Shame tells us we are fundamentally different, alienated, and undeserving of love or belonging. It whispers that if people knew the real us, they would reject us. This fear of exposure keeps us hiding, keeps us guarded, and prevents us from experiencing genuine connection. The ego thrives on comparison. It constantly measures us against others, and when we fall short, it can breed shame. Everyone else seems to have it together, I'm the only one who struggles like this. This thought process, fueled by egoic comparison, is a fertile ground for shame to take root. When we experience shame, our natural inclination is often to hide, to numb, or to lash out defensively. These are all egoic strategies designed to protect the vulnerable sense of self that feels threatened. Instead of confronting the feeling, we engage in behaviors that further entrench us in the ego's grip. The Buddha's teachings offer a path beyond shame, not by eradicating the ego, which is a complex undertaking, but by seeing through its machinations. When we recognize that shame is a product of the ego's judgments and fears, we can begin to loosen its hold. Mindfulness practice is key here. By bringing gentle, non-judgmental awareness to our thoughts and feelings, including those related to shame, we can start to see them as mental events rather than absolute truths. When shame arises, we can acknowledge it. There is the feeling of shame. We notice the physical sensations in the body, the tightness in the chest, the heat in the face, without immediately identifying with the narrative of unworthiness that shame carries. The ego desperately wants to be seen as special, or at least as normal. Shame is the fear of not being so. It's the ego's deep anxiety about its own perceived inadequacy. When we can recognize shame as an egoic defense or a judgment, we create an opening for self-compassion. The opposite of shame is not pride or arrogance, but acceptance. It's the radical acceptance of ourselves as we are, flaws and all, recognizing that these flaws do not define our core essence. This acceptance is not a passive surrender, it's an active, courageous engagement with our humanity. To move beyond shame, we must first see it for what it is, a projection of the ego's insecurities. It's a story we tell ourselves about ourselves, a story that obscures our inherent goodness and our fundamental connection to all beings. Understanding this is vital for cultivating the genuine self-compassion that allows us to heal. And in the next section, we will explore a powerful tool for this, mindfulness, with the understanding that mindfulness means nothing to fix. We often approach mindfulness with a subtle, yet significant, misunderstanding. We think of it as another tool in our arsenal for self-improvement, another technique to smooth out the rough edges of our personalities. We imagine that by diligently practicing mindfulness, we will eventually arrive at a state of perfect equanimity, free from all negative emotions and challenging thoughts. We believe mindfulness is about fixing what's wrong. But this perspective misses the profound, liberating essence of mindfulness itself. The Buddha's teaching on mindfulness at its core is not about achieving a fixed, improved state of being. It is about radically accepting and deeply understanding our experience as it is, in this very moment, without any need for alteration. Mindfulness means nothing to fix. When we sit to meditate, or when we bring mindful awareness to our daily activities, we're not trying to stop the thoughts from arising. We're not trying to eliminate unpleasant feelings or force a sense of calm. If we approach mindfulness with the intention to fix ourselves, we are essentially bringing the same old striving, problem-solving energy that brought us suffering in the first place. It's like trying to use a hammer to soothe a wound. The tool itself is not the problem, it's how we're applying it. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention on purpose in the present moment non-judgmentally. The key word here is non-judgmentally. This means observing whatever arises, thoughts, emotions, bodily sensations, with curiosity and acceptance, rather than with criticism or an agenda for change. If a thought of anxiety arises, a mindful response is not to push it away or tell yourself, "I shouldn't be feeling anxious, I need to fix this." Instead, it's to notice, there is anxiety. You acknowledge its presence, perhaps observe the sensations it creates in the body, and then gently return your attention to your anchor like the breath. You don't try to banish the anxiety, you simply witness its passing. This is where the liberation lies. By not trying to fix our experience, we stop the cycle of self-criticism and resistance that fuels so much of our suffering. When we accept our thoughts and feelings as they are, without demanding they be different, they lose their power to overwhelm us. They are seen for what they are, transient phenomena arising and passing within the ground of our awareness. This is not passive resignation, it's an active engagement with reality. It's saying, yes, this is what is happening right now, and I can choose to meet it with awareness rather than resistance. This acceptance is the very thing that allows for genuine transformation, because it removes the obstacles of our own mental projections. Consider the common phrases we use: "I need to fix my negative thinking," or "I need to fix my inability to be present." These phrases reveal our underlying assumption that there is something fundamentally broken that needs repairing. Mindfulness gently challenges this entire premise. It suggests that the problem is not the aerosol of thoughts or feelings, but our relationship to them, our resistance, our judgment, our futile attempts to control them. When we truly understand that mindfulness means nothing to fix, we are freed from the exhausting pursuit of perfection. We can begin to appreciate the present moment, not as a prelude to a better future, but as a complete experience in itself. This shift in perspective moves us from a place of inherent lack to a place of inherent sufficiency. This understanding opens the door to a deeper form of self-care, one that isn't about self-improvement, but about self-compassion. It's a recognition that the peace we seek is not something we have to attain, but something that can be uncovered when we stop constantly trying to alter our experience. And this brings us to a crucial realization. The compassion we so readily seek from others is often the very thing we refuse to grant ourselves. We are often remarkably adept at extending compassion to others. We offer words of comfort to a grieving friend, a listening ear to a struggling colleague, a helping hand to a stranger in need. We understand on an intuitive level the importance of kindness, empathy, and understanding when someone else is hurting. Yet when it comes to ourselves, this capacity for compassion often shrinks or disappears altogether. We can be our own harshest critics, quick to judge our missteps, unforgiving of our perceived failures, and demanding of a standard of perfection that we would never impose on anyone else. The compassion we so readily offer the world seems to evaporate when it's directed inward. This withholding of self-compassion is a profound source of suffering. When we don't offer ourselves kindness in moments of pain, struggle, or inadequacy, we amplify that suffering. We create an inner landscape of self-recrimination and loneliness, reinforcing the very feelings of unworthiness we've been trying to overcome. It's like tending to an open wound with acid instead of balm. The ego, as we've seen, plays a significant role here. It often frames self-compassion as weakness, as self-indulgence, or as an excuse for poor behavior. The voice that says, "You need to be tougher on yourself to stay motivated," or "It's not okay to falter," is the ego attempting to maintain control through harshness. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that true strength, true motivation, and genuine transformation arise not from self-punishment, but from self-compassion. It's the understanding that we are all human, that suffering is a universal experience, and that meeting our own pain with kindness is not a sign of weakness, but a profound act of courage and wisdom. When we can offer ourselves the same acceptance and understanding we would offer a beloved friend, we create an internal environment of safety. This safety allows us to explore our challenging emotions without fear of judgment, to learn from our mistakes without being consumed by shame, and to embrace our imperfections without feeling fundamentally flawed. The practice of mindfulness helps cultivate this self-compassion. By mindfully observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment, we begin to recognize the habitual patterns of self-criticism. With this awareness, we can then consciously choose to respond to ourselves with kindness. A simple practice is to place your hand over your heart when you notice you're being hard on yourself. Take a few deep breaths and silently repeat phrases like, "May I be kind to myself," "May I accept myself as I am," or "May I offer myself the compassion I need." This gentle physical gesture can powerfully anchor us in self-acceptance. We often believe that if we are too kind to ourselves, we will become lazy or complacent, but the opposite is usually true. When we stop the internal fight, when we offer ourselves compassion, we create the very conditions for authentic growth. Like a plant that needs sunlight and water to thrive, Our inner world needs kindness to flourish. The capacity for compassion is not a limited resource that one person can only give to others at the expense of themselves. It is an infinite wellspring. By learning to access and direct that compassion towards ourselves, we not only heal our own suffering, but also deepen our capacity to understand and connect with the suffering of others. The core of this practice is to recognize that our inherent worth is not dependent on our performance or our perceived perfection. It is an unconditional given. The compassion we refuse to give ourselves is the very balm that can soothe our deepest wounds and unlock our greatest potential. And to truly heal, we must understand where the roots of this inner conflict lie. The root of suffering is not simply in the experiences we encounter, but in our deep-seated resistance to them. We often mistake the circumstances of our lives for the root of our suffering. We believe that if we could just change our job, improve our relationships, or acquire a certain possession, then happiness and peace would finally be ours. We chase external solutions, convinced that the problems lie in what we lack or what is wrong out there. However, Buddhist wisdom points to a more fundamental truth. The root of suffering is not in the experiences themselves, but in our resistance to them. It is our refusal to accept things as they are, our constant battle against the flow of life, that generates the most profound distress. Pain, loss, disappointment, and change are inevitable parts of the human experience. They are natural currents in the river of existence. When we try to dam the river, to stop its flow, to push against its natural course, we only create turbulence and exhaustion. Our resistance is the friction that ignites the fires of suffering. Think about a time you felt intense frustration or anger. Chances are it wasn't just the situation itself, but your reaction to it. It was the thought, "This shouldn't be happening," or "I can't stand this," that amplified the discomfort. It was the refusal to accept the reality of the moment. This resistance can manifest in many ways: denial, refusing to acknowledge that a difficult situation exists; avoidance, trying to escape or distract ourselves from uncomfortable feelings or situations; rumination, obsessively replaying past events or worrying about future possibilities, refusing to let them go; judgment, labeling experiences as good or bad and clinging to the good while rejecting the bad. Each of these is a form of fighting with reality. And the ego, ever vigilant in its quest for control and its aversion to vulnerability, is a master of this resistance. It tells us that accepting things as they are is a sign of weakness, of giving up. But the truth is, true strength lies in the courage to accept, to be present with what is, and to respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. When we stop resisting, something remarkable happens. The energy we were spending on the struggle is released. We don't necessarily like the difficult experience, but the suffering associated with it diminishes significantly. It's like letting go of a clenched fist. The tension eases and our hand can relax. The practice boils down to cultivating acceptance. Acceptance is not passive resignation or approval. It is the clear-eyed recognition of what is happening without adding layers of judgment or resistance. It's saying, "This is here right now," and then choosing a wise response. When we accept the impermanent nature of all things, we are less disturbed when they change. When we accept that life will inevitably bring challenges, we are better equipped to meet them with equanimity. When we accept our own imperfections, we are free from the exhausting burden of self-recrimination. The path to freedom from suffering, therefore, is not about changing our circumstances to eliminate discomfort, but about changing our relationship to discomfort itself. It's about learning to be present with what arises, to meet it with awareness, and to allow it to pass without the added burden of our resistance. This willingness to be present with all experience, the pleasant and the unpleasant, is the very essence of courage. It's this courage, born from acceptance, that allows us to see beyond the limitations we place upon ourselves. And in this process, we begin to understand the nature of the ego's grip. The ego cannot be worthy because its very foundation is comparison and striving. We spend an enormous amount of energy trying to be worthy. We strive for achievements, we seek validation, we polish our public image, all in an effort to feel good enough to feel worthy. We believe that if we can just accumulate enough positive attributes, enough successes, enough approval, then finally, we will attain that state of deservingness. But this pursuit is, in essence, a chase of a phantom. The ego, the very construct that drives this relentless striving, cannot, by its nature, achieve true worthiness. The ego is built on comparison, on distinction, on the idea of being separate and often better than others. Its very foundation is conditional. Worthiness, in its deepest sense, is unconditional. The ego measures itself against an ever-shifting benchmark, One day, achieving a certain goal might make it feel worthy. The next day, that same achievement might feel insignificant, overshadowed by a new aspiration or a perceived inadequacy in another area. The ego's sense of worth is always dependent on external validation or the successful outcome of its efforts. It's perpetually seeking, never truly arriving. When we identify with the ego, we tie our sense of self-worth to these external factors. We become emotionally invested in maintaining the ego's illusion of superiority or competence. This leads to a constant state of anxiety, the fear of failure, the fear of not measuring up, the fear of being exposed as less than what the ego claims to be. The ego cannot be worthy because its very definition relies on contrast and hierarchy. It needs to compare itself to others or to an ideal to establish its own identity. I am worthy because I am more successful than X, or I am worthy because I have achieved Y. This is not true worthiness. It is a temporary sense of superiority, a fleeting validation that inevitably fades, leaving the ego searching for its next fix. True worthiness, on the other hand, is not earned or achieved, it is inherent. It is the fundamental quality of being that exists before any egoic construct or conditioned belief. It's the recognition that just by existing, by being conscious, by being alive, you possess an intrinsic value that no external circumstance can diminish. The teachings suggest that the path to realizing this inherent worth is not through strengthening the ego or making it more impressive, but by seeing through the ego's game entirely. It involves recognizing that the ego's constant striving for worthiness is a futile exercise, like trying to fill a bottomless pit. Mindfulness helps us observe the ego's machinations. When we notice ourselves engaged in comparison, in self-criticism driven by a desire to be better, or in seeking external approval, we can gently recognize this as the ego at play. Instead of identifying with these egoic impulses, we can choose to step back and observe them, allowing them to pass without reinforcing them. The freedom that comes from understanding that the ego cannot be worthy is immense. It liberates us from the endless cycle of striving and comparison. It allows us to rest in the simple fact of our being. It's not about abandoning ambition or effort, but about shifting the motivation from a desperate need to prove oneself to a more natural expression of one's capabilities. When we cease the desperate pursuit of egoic worthiness, we can begin to experience a sense of inner peace and quiet confidence that is not dependent on outer achievements. It's a grounding in the present moment, a recognition of the inherent goodness that exists beneath the surface of our mental chatter. And in this grounded presence, we can begin to see our original face, the face of pure awareness, untouched by the ego. And in the next section, we will explore the concept of presence as our original face. We spend so much of our lives lost in thought, wandering through memories of the past or anxieties about the future. We are rarely fully present in the here and now. Our attention is a scattered resource, pulled in 1,000 directions by mental projections, worries, and desires that keep us from experiencing the richness of our current reality. But what if the very thing we are all searching for, a sense of belonging, a feeling of home, a true identity, is not something to be found in some future achievement or altered state? What if it's already here in the simple, unadorned act of being present? Buddhist wisdom suggests that presence in its purest form is our original face, our true nature, the essence of who we are. Our original face is a metaphor for the awakened mind, the pure awareness that exists before all conditioning, all layers of self-image, all egoic constructions. It's the unchanging awareness that sees the sunrise, hears the birdsong, feels the warmth of the sun on your skin, and experiences the rise and fall of every thought and emotion. It's pure, unmediated experience. The problem is we've become so accustomed to the story, the mental commentary, the incessant internal dialogue, that we mistake this narrative for our true self. We identify with our thoughts, our opinions, our memories, and in doing so we obscure our original face, much like clouds obscure the sun. The practice of mindfulness is essentially the path back to this original face, the path of presence. When we anchor our attention in the present moment, whether it's through focusing on the breath, bodily sensations, or the sounds around us, we are gently coaxing our awareness away from the labyrinth of thought and back to the reality of what is actually happening. This is not about emptying the mind or achieving a state of blankness. It's about shifting our focus from the mental constructs that create our egoic self to the underlying awareness through which all experience is known. It's like realizing you're the movie screen, not just the characters in the movie. When we are truly present, the constant chatter of the mind quiets down. The anxieties about the past and future lose their urgency. We become more open, more receptive, more alive. In these moments of presence, we might catch a glimpse of our original face, a sense of deep peace, clarity, and unshakable self-acceptance. This realization is not about creating a new identity. It's about recognizing the identity that has always been there, hidden beneath the layers of conditioning. It's like recognizing a familiar landscape that you've simply stopped paying attention to. The ego, of course, resists this shift. It thrives on busyness, on drama, on the illusion of control that comes from constantly planning and analyzing. Presence, with its quiet simplicity and lack of agenda, feels unproductive or even threatening to the ego's narrative of self. But the truth is, presence is not an achievement. It is the ground of all achievement and the source of all genuine peace. It is where we are always fundamentally already home. And to truly inhabit this presence, to see our original face clearly, we must learn to listen to our experience without the constant overlay of our personal stories. And in the next section, we will explore the practice of listening without a story. We often believe that listening is a passive act, something that just happens, but in reality, much of our listening is heavily filtered. We don't just hear words, we hear them through the lens of our own experiences, our beliefs, our expectations, and importantly, our stories. This is why, even when someone is speaking directly to us, we can sometimes feel profoundly misunderstood or disconnected. Imagine two people talking. One person shares a difficulty they are facing. The other person, intending to be helpful, immediately jumps in with advice or perhaps a similar story of their own. What's happening here? The listener isn't truly hearing the speaker's experience. They are hearing it through the story they are already spinning in their mind. How can I fix this? Or this reminds me of when I. This tendency to inject our personal narrative into every interaction prevents us from truly connecting with what is being communicated, and more importantly, from truly connecting with the person who is speaking. It's as if we're so engrossed in our own book that we can't read the one being offered to us. Listening without a story is a profound practice of mindfulness. It involves setting aside our own agenda, our own interpretations, and our own preconceived notions, and opening ourselves fully to receive what the other person is communicating, both verbally and non-verbally. It's about being present with their experience, not overlaying it with our own mental drama. When we listen without a story, we create a space of genuine understanding. We allow the speaker to feel heard and seen for who they are in that moment, without the distortion of our personal biases. This is an incredibly powerful act of giving, a form of true presence and compassion. How do we cultivate this practice? It begins with a conscious intention before entering into a conversation. We can silently remind ourselves, I am here to listen, not to judge, not to fix, not to compare, but simply to understand. During the conversation, we pay attention not just to the words, but to the tone of voice, the body language, the underlying emotions being expressed. When a thought arises in our own mind, a judgment, an opinion, a related memory, we gently acknowledge it, notice it, and allow it to pass, bringing our attention back to the speaker. We resist the urge to interrupt or to formulate our response while they are still speaking. This practice extends beyond our interactions with others. We can also practice listening without a story to our own inner experience. When difficult emotions or challenging thoughts arise within us, we can listen to them without immediately labeling them as good, bad, or creating complex narratives around them. We can simply acknowledge there is sadness or there is worry, and allow those experiences to be present without demanding they be changed or explained away. This kind of listening, both to others and to ourselves, is a direct path to dissolving the illusions that keep us separate and suffering. It's a way of truly seeing and being seen, of connecting at a level deeper than the superficial stories we all carry. And in this practice of open listening, we begin to realize that the feeling of being lost has been a misunderstanding of our own true nature. In the next section, we will explore why we were never lost, just mistaken. The feeling of being lost is a familiar one. Many of us grapple with a sense of aimlessness, a feeling that we haven't found our purpose, our place in the world, or even our true selves. We embark on quests, searching for something outside ourselves that we believe will finally make us feel found, complete, or whole. But what if this feeling of being lost is not an accurate reflection of our reality? What if it's a misperception, a fundamental mistake in how we understand ourselves and our place in the universe? Buddhist wisdom suggests that we were never truly lost. We are, in our most essential nature, already complete, already whole, already connected. The feeling of being lost arises from a mistaken identity, a misidentification with the transient self, the ego, rather than our true fundamental nature. This mistake happens when we identify with our thoughts, our emotions, our memories, our social roles, and our perceived limitations. We build a story around these temporary aspects of experience and come to believe that this story is who we are. When this self-constructed identity feels insufficient, incomplete, or threatened, we experience the sensation of being lost. It's like a person who is wearing a mask and has forgotten they are wearing it, believing the mask is their face. They might feel trapped by the mask, uncomfortable with its limitations, and yearn to discover their true face. They search everywhere looking for this elusive real face outside of themselves, unaware that the face they seek is already there, hidden by the mask they are wearing. Our true nature, our interconnectedness with all things, our inherent goodness, is like that true face. It's not something to be found or attained, it is something to be recognized. The feeling of being lost arises from this very act of not recognizing what is already present. The ego, the construct of I that is based on our conditioned identity, thrives on the story of being lost. It needs a narrative of struggle, of searching to maintain its sense of self. If we are already found, already whole, what purpose does the ego serve? This is why the ego resists the realization of our inherent completeness. The path out of this mistaken identity, out of the feeling of being lost, is not through searching harder or acquiring something new, but through a process of deconstruction and recognition. It involves gently questioning the beliefs we hold about ourselves, observing the patterns of thought that create our sense of separation, and in those moments of clear awareness, glimpsing our true, unlost nature. Mindfulness practice is a crucial tool in this process. By paying attention to the present moment without judgment, we begin to decouple our sense of self from the ceaseless flow of thoughts and emotions. We start to see that these mental events are not the totality of who we are, but are phenomena arising within a larger, more fundamental awareness. This awareness, this presence, is our original face. It is the essence of existence. It is not lost, it is simply obscured by the mistaken belief that we are the mask, the story, the ego. When we recognize this, the frantic search ceases. The feeling of being lost dissolves, replaced by a quiet sense of belonging and innate wholeness. And in this realization, we begin to understand that our heart, the center of our being, doesn't need external approval to be validated or to open. It is, in its most fundamental state, already open. And in the next section, we will explore the beauty of the heart not needing approval to open. We often live with a silent, persistent yearning for approval. We seek validation in our relationships, our careers, our social interactions, believing that external affirmation is necessary for our sense of worth and for our hearts to feel truly alive and open. We measure our own value by the nods, the compliments, the positive feedback we receive from others. This external reliance creates a fragile existence. Our emotional state becomes tethered to the opinions and reactions of others. When approval is given, we might feel a fleeting sense of joy and openness. But when it's withheld, or worse, when we perceive criticism or rejection, our hearts can close tightly. We retreat, we defend ourselves, we feel diminished, and the experience of openness seems to vanish. The problem with seeking approval is that it places the locus of our well-being outside of ourselves. It suggests that our capacity for joy, for love, for connection is dependent on external factors. This is a deeply disempowering way to live. Buddhist wisdom offers a radical and liberating perspective. The heart, in its true nature, does not need approval to open. The heart's capacity for love, for compassion, for connection is an inherent quality of our being, much like the sun's ability to shine. It's not something that is granted or withheld based on our performance or how others perceive us. Think of a lotus flower. It rises from muddy waters but blossoms into pure, radiant beauty, untouched by the murk from which it emerges. The lotus doesn't bloom because it receives praise for its petals. It blooms because that is its inherent nature, its response to the conditions for growth. Similarly, our hearts have an inherent capacity to open, to love, and to connect, regardless of external circumstances. When we stop seeking external approval and instead turn inward with acceptance and self-compassion, we begin to access this innate capacity. We realize that our worthiness is not contingent on affirmation, and our ability to love and connect is not dependent on being liked. The ego, however, often clings to the need for approval. It fears that without external validation, it will cease to exist or be recognized. It whispers that if we are not approved of, we are not valuable. This is the ego's strategy to maintain its grip, to keep us seeking and striving, rather than resting in our true nature. Practicing mindfulness helps to dismantle this conditioning. As we observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment, we can notice the urge to seek approval, the fear of rejection, and the disappointment when it doesn't arrive. By witnessing these patterns with gentle awareness, we begin to see that they are just that, patterns, not immutable truths. When we recognize that our heart's opening is an internal affair, not an external one, we become more resilient. We can weather criticism or judgment without our inner world collapsing. We can connect with others more authentically, not out of a need to be liked, but out of a genuine desire to share and to experience connection. This doesn't mean we cease to care about our impact on others. It simply means our sense of inner security and the openness of our heart are no longer held hostage by external opinions. The true blossoming of the heart comes from its own inherent nature, nourished by self-acceptance and present-moment awareness. This realization shifts our focus from trying to be worthy of love to recognizing that we are already worthy, already loving, and already connected. And as we cultivate this inner openness, we start to see that the practice of meditation at its deepest level isn't about creating something new, but about revealing what doesn't need fixing in the first place. And in the next section, we will explore just that. Meditation reveals what doesn't need fixing. We often come to meditation with a hidden agenda to fix ourselves. We arrive with a mental list of perceived flaws, our anxiety, our racing thoughts, our impatience, our inability to concentrate, and we sit down hoping that meditation will somehow erase these problems, leaving us with a perfect, serene mind. We see meditation as a powerful tool for self-improvement, a way to sculpt ourselves into a more desirable, more enlightened version of who we are. But this approach, while well-intentioned, actually misses the profound liberating power of meditation itself. The true gift of meditation isn't in changing or fixing our experience, but in revealing what is already perfect, what is already complete, what doesn't need fixing in the first place. When we sit with the intention to fix, we are still operating from a place of scarcity, a belief that something is fundamentally wrong with us. We bring the same striving, judgmental energy that creates our problems in the first place to the meditation cushion. This creates an internal conflict, a struggle against our own mind and body, which is counterproductive to the very peace we seek. The profound insight meditation offers is that our true nature, our awareness, is already whole and complete. The thoughts, emotions, and sensations that arise, even the uncomfortable ones, are not defects in this fundamental awareness. They are simply phenomena that arise and pass within it, like clouds in the sky or waves on the ocean. Meditation, when approached with the understanding that nothing needs fixing, becomes a practice of gentle observation and acceptance. Instead of trying to stop the thoughts, we watch them arise and pass. Instead of trying to push away difficult emotions, we allow them to be present, noting their impermanent nature. We simply bear witness to the unfolding of our experience without judgment or agenda. This act of effortless witnessing is not passive, it is profoundly active in its acceptance. It's in this space of non-resistance that we begin to glimpse our inherent wholeness. We realize that the calm, clear awareness beneath the surface activity of the mind is not something we need to create or achieve. It is already present. The striving to fix ourselves, ironically, is what creates the illusion of our brokenness. It's like trying to polish a diamond that is already brilliant. The polishing itself can obscure its natural sparkle. When we stop trying to fix, we allow the diamond of our true nature to be seen. This shift in perspective from fixing to revealing transforms the practice of meditation. It becomes less of a chore and more of a homecoming. We are not trying to become something we are not, but rather to recognize what we have always been. When we approach meditation with the understanding that it aims to reveal what doesn't need fixing, we are liberated from the pressure of performance. There are no good or bad meditations, only different opportunities to practice looking with gentle awareness. Every thought, every sensation becomes an invitation to deepen our recognition of our inherent completeness. And in this discovery of our already whole nature, we can begin to see the quiet beauty in the ordinary, the simple reality of our existence, without needing grand gestures or profound transformations. And in the next section, we will explore the beauty of being ordinary. In a world that constantly urges us towards exceptionalism, towards extraordinary achievements, towards standing out from the crowd, the idea of embracing our ordinariness can feel almost like a defeat. We are bombarded with images of success, of glamour, of lives that appear to be anything but ordinary. This cultural emphasis can create a subtle dissatisfaction, a feeling that our everyday lives are somehow less valuable, less meaningful, than those portrayed in the highlight reels of others. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to consider a different perspective, the profound beauty and inherent peace that can be found in simply being ordinary, in embracing the everyday reality of our lives just as they are. Ordinariness, when viewed without the lens of comparison and striving, is not a lack of something, it is the fundamental ground of our existence. Our true nature, our Buddha nature, is not extraordinary in the sense of being rare or exceptional. It is, in fact, the most ordinary thing there is. It is the simple fact of awareness, the capacity to be present, the universal thread that connects all beings. To be ordinary is to be connected to this fundamental reality, to be fully human with all the joys and sorrows that entails. The ego, on the other hand, thrives on the extraordinary. It seeks to distinguish itself, to accumulate status, to be recognized for being special. This constant pursuit of the extraordinary leaves us perpetually restless, always looking beyond the present moment for something more, something better, something that will finally make us feel significant. We become disconnected from the simple beauty that surrounds us in our everyday lives. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to see the extraordinary within the ordinary. We notice the intricate patterns of a leaf, the warmth of a cup of tea in our hands, the quiet rhythm of our breath, the simple act of listening to another person. These are ordinary moments, yet when witnessed with present awareness, they can reveal a depth of beauty and wonder that surpasses any manufactured sense of the extraordinary. The beauty of being ordinary is its authenticity. It's the absence of pretense, the freedom from the need to impress or outperform. It's the quiet contentment that arises when we stop comparing ourselves to others and simply embrace the reality of our own unfolding experience. This is not an invitation to complacency or a dull resignation to the mundane. Rather, it's a profound recognition that our true home is not in some future state of extraordinary achievement, but in the simple, present reality of each ordinary moment. When we cease our striving for the exceptional, we open ourselves to the grace of the ordinary. The pursuit of the extraordinary often leads us away from ourselves, chasing an ideal that is perpetually out of reach. Embracing the ordinary, however, brings us back to ourselves, anchored in the present, finding contentment not in becoming someone else, but in being fully who we already are. This appreciation for the ordinary is a doorway to a deeper understanding of our role in the world. It allows us to see that our true contribution often lies not in grand gestures, but in the consistent unfolding of our sincere presence and quiet kindness in everyday moments. And in this process of grounding ourselves in the ordinary, we can also begin to let go of the need to be the sole healer or savior in our own lives. In the next section, we will explore why letting go of the healer role is essential for true well-being. Many of us carry a deep-seated drive to be the healer, not just for ourselves, but for others, for our families, for our friends, and sometimes even for the world. We feel a responsibility to mend what is broken, to fix what is wrong, to offer solutions and be the source of comfort and repair. This impulse can stem from a noble place, a desire to alleviate suffering and contribute positively to the world. However, when this drive becomes a central part of our identity, when we feel that our worth is tied to our ability to heal or fix, it can become a source of immense burden and, paradoxically, prevent us from achieving true peace and well-being ourselves. This is the ego's subtle way of seeking validation through indispensable service. This healer role often arises from our own experiences of pain and struggle. We've navigated our own difficulties, perhaps found some measure of healing, and in doing so, we often internalize the belief that we must now be the constant problem solver, the one who has the answers. We might feel that if we stop healing, if we stop being strong, if we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we will somehow fail or worse, cease to be valuable. When we are preoccupied with the role of the healer, we can become so focused on the perceived needs of others or on the perceived flaws within ourselves that require fixing that we fail to rest in our own being. We might overextend ourselves, neglecting our own needs and boundaries, all in service of this identity. The ego finds a very satisfying narrative in being the healer. It allows us to feel important, capable, and needed. It can provide a sense of purpose, but it's a purpose built on the foundation of perceived brokenness, either our own or others. And if our purpose is intrinsically linked to fixing what's wrong, then we are constantly looking for problems, and our definition of self relies on their continued existence. True well-being, and indeed genuine healing and wisdom, arises not from the desperate act of fixing, but from the courageous act of allowing. It's about recognizing that the universe in its wisdom has its own way of unfolding and healing, and our role is not to control or impose solutions, but to be present, to offer genuine connection, and to allow healing to happen naturally. When we let go of the burden of being the sole healer, we acknowledge that we are also fundamentally human, with our own needs for healing, support, and rest. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable, which in turn invites the true healing that comes from connection and shared human experience. This letting go is not about abandoning responsibility or ceasing to help others. It's about shifting the motivation. Instead of acting from a place of needing to fix, we act from a place of authentic compassion and presence. We offer support and presence without the underlying belief that we must be the ultimate solution provider. This also applies to how we relate to our own internal experiences. When we stop trying to be our own soul healer, we allow ourselves to receive support, to be gentle with ourselves, and to recognize that healing is a process that unfolds rather than a problem to be solved. The greatest act of healing we can offer ourselves, and by extension others, is to be present with what is, to offer kindness, and to trust in the natural unfolding of life. It's in this space of allowing that true well-being flourishes, and we begin to understand that pain itself is not an indictment of our character or a sign of failure. And in the next section, we will explore why pain is not a sign of failure. We live in a culture that often equates pain with failure. If we experience physical discomfort, we think something is wrong with our body. If we feel emotional distress, we believe we've somehow failed to manage our emotions correctly. If we encounter setbacks or difficulties in life, we interpret them as clear indications that we are not succeeding, that we are falling short of some unspoken standard. This ingrained association between pain and failure creates a deep aversion to anything that feels uncomfortable. We try to avoid pain at all costs, seeking constant pleasure and ease. When pain inevitably arises, as it does for all living beings, we often react by either denying it, fighting it, or blaming ourselves for experiencing it. This reaction, this interpretation of pain as failure, is a significant source of our needless suffering. Buddhist wisdom teaches that pain is not a sign of failure, it is simply a part of life. It is an inevitable aspect of impermanence and interconnectedness. Our bodies experience wear and tear, our emotions fluctuate. Life presents challenges, losses, and disappointments. These are not indicators of our inadequacy, but rather the natural texture of existence. When we understand that pain is not failure, we can begin to approach it with curiosity rather than fear. This shift in perspective allows us to meet our discomfort with a greater degree of equanimity and wisdom. Instead of recoiling, we can ask, "What is this pain trying to teach me?" The ego, however, is a champion of equating pain with failure. It uses pain as evidence for its own perceived shortcomings. If I were stronger, I wouldn't feel this way. If I were more capable, this wouldn't have happened. These are the ego's narratives that twist pain into a personal indictment. The practice of mindfulness, particularly the non-judgmental observation of our experience, is crucial here. When pain arises, we can practice simply noticing it. Where is it in the body? What quality does it have? Sharp, dull, throbbing, achy? Without adding the story of "this is bad" or "this means I'm failing," we can observe the sensation itself. By detaching the experience of pain from the judgment of failure, we remove a layer of unnecessary suffering. The pain itself may still be present, but the added burden of self-condemnation begins to lift. This allows us to be more open to the lessons pain might offer, more resilient in its presence, and more inclined to seek genuine healing rather than simply avoidance or self-punishment. This understanding also extends to our emotional landscape. When we feel sadness, frustration, or fear, these are not signs that we have failed at being happy or calm. They are simply human emotions arising in response to our experiences. To judge ourselves for feeling them is to add a second layer of suffering onto the first experience. The courage to acknowledge pain, to allow it to be present without assigning it the label of failure, is a profound act of self-compassion. It's a recognition that our humanity includes the capacity for discomfort, and that meeting this discomfort with kindness is a sign of inner strength, not weakness. This acceptance of pain as a natural part of life opens the door to a more authentic way of being, one that is less driven by the fear of discomfort and more guided by wisdom and presence. And to fully embrace this, we need to understand our deep-seated patterns of defining ourselves, namely non-attachment to self-definition. And in the next section, we will explore the concept of non-attachment to self-definition. We all define ourselves, don't we? We have concepts about who we are, what we like, what we believe, what our strengths and weaknesses are. We build an identity, a narrative framework that gives us a sense of continuity and meaning. This process of defining ourselves is natural and, to a certain extent, necessary for navigating the world. However, when we become too attached to these self-definitions, when we cling tightly to the stories we've created about ourselves, this can become a significant source of suffering. We become rigid, resistant to change, and afraid of anything that might challenge our established identity. Think of it like a sculptor who has meticulously crafted a statue. They've spent hours, days, or even years perfecting every curve, every detail. Now they are deeply attached to this particular form. What happens if someone suggests a slight alteration, or if the marble itself has an unexpected flaw that requires a change in the design? The sculptor attached to their definition might resist, become defensive, or feel their work is ruined. Similarly, when we are attached to our self-definition, I am a calm person, I am an ambitious worker, I am introverted, we resist experiences or insights that don't fit that definition. If a situation arises that makes us feel angry, which contradicts our definition of being calm, we might deny the anger, judge ourselves for feeling it, or try to suppress it, rather than acknowledging the natural ebb and flow of human emotion. This attachment creates a closed system. We become afraid of new experiences that might broaden our definition or even threaten it. We might shy away from opportunities that don't align with our perceived capabilities or resist feedback that challenges our self-image. It's like living in a house with permanently drawn curtains, afraid to see what lies beyond. Buddhist teachings advocate for non-attachment, and this applies strongly to our self-definitions. It doesn't mean we abandon all sense of self or stop having a personality. It means we loosen our grip on these definitions, recognizing them as impermanent constructs, mental labels that are useful but not ultimately real. When we practice non-attachment to self-definition, we become more fluid, more adaptable. We can embrace new experiences, learn from challenges, and integrate different aspects of ourselves without feeling that our core identity is threatened. We become more open to the unfolding nature of life and our own personal growth. Mindfulness is a powerful tool for cultivating this non-attachment. By observing our thoughts and feelings without labeling them as good or bad, me or not me, we begin to see that these mental events are transient. We can notice the thought, I am shy, without immediately identifying with it, without letting it define our entire being. We see it as a passing mental event, not an immutable truth. When we are not attached to a fixed self-definition, we are free to explore, to grow, and to be present with whatever life brings. We can meet challenges with greater resilience, knowing that our fundamental worth is not tied to maintaining a particular image or set of characteristics. This practice of non-attachment to self-definition leads to a profound freedom. It is the freedom to be, rather than the burden of having to be a certain way. It allows us to embrace the dynamic, ever-changing nature of our lives and ourselves, recognizing that our true essence is far greater than any label we could ever apply. And in this freedom, we can begin to see the illusion that underlies even the most convincing aspects of our identity, the illusion of proving ourselves. In the next section, we will explore the illusion of proving yourself. We are often driven by a subconscious, or sometimes all too conscious, need to prove ourselves. Prove our worth, prove our capabilities, prove our intelligence, prove our value to others, and perhaps most importantly, prove it to ourselves. This drive can manifest in countless ways: overworking, constantly seeking validation, striving for external markers of success, or becoming defensive when our abilities are questioned. It's a deeply ingrained pattern, often stemming from those early feelings of not being enough. But what if this relentless pursuit of proving ourselves is an illusion? What if the very act of trying to prove something to the world, or to ourselves, is a self-defeating endeavor that ultimately distracts us from our inherent essence? The ego, as we've explored, thrives on this proving game. It sees worthiness as something to be earned, something that needs constant demonstration. The ego wants to build a case for its own existence and significance, and proving oneself is its primary strategy. It's like a lawyer constantly trying to build a defense for a client who is already innocent. When we are caught in this illusion, our focus becomes external. We're always concerned with how we are perceived, with collecting evidence of our competence, with measuring ourselves against others. This constant external orientation makes us anxious and prevents us from truly inhabiting the present moment. Our sense of self is precariously balanced on the outcomes of our efforts and the opinions of others. This need to prove oneself creates a hidden pressure. Every interaction, every task, every challenge can be seen as an opportunity to either uphold or undermine the carefully constructed image we're trying to project. This leads to a lack of authenticity, as we may suppress parts of ourselves that don't fit the desired narrative, or behave in ways that are not entirely genuine, all in the name of proving our worth. The Buddhist approach, particularly the concept of recognizing our inherent Buddha nature, offers a profound antidote to this illusion. If our true essence is already complete, already inherently worthy, then what is there to prove? The striving to prove yourself is like trying to add value to gold by painting it gold. The gold is already pure and precious. The path to freedom from this illusion involves a shift in focus from proving to being. It's about bringing our attention back to the present moment, to the simple act of engaging with life authentically, without an agenda of demonstrating anything. It's about trusting that our worth is not something we create through performance, but something that is already present. Mindfulness practice is key to dismantling this illusion. By observing our thoughts and motivations without judgment, we can begin to identify the deep-seated need to prove ourselves. When that urge arises, instead of acting on it, we can simply acknowledge it. There is the impulse to prove myself. We can notice the anxiety or insecurity that might be fueling it, and then gently bring our attention back to the present experience, letting go of the need for external validation or self-affirmation. When we stop trying to prove ourselves, we become more resilient. We can accept feedback, both positive and negative, without our sense of self being shattered or inflated. We can engage in activities for their own sake, rather than for the external validation they might bring. This leads to a more authentic, less anxious, and ultimately more peaceful way of living. The freedom found in recognizing this illusion is immense. It frees us from the exhausting cycle of performance and validation, allowing us to simply be ourselves, fully and authentically. And in this authentic presence, we can begin to see our suffering not as a personal failing, but through a lens of deep understanding and care, a concept known as bodhicitta. And in the next section, we will explore seeing your suffering with bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, it's a Sanskrit term that translates roughly to awakened mind or enlightenment heart. In the Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, it refers to the aspiration to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. It is a profound intention born of boundless compassion and wisdom. While often associated with the motivation to help others achieve enlightenment, the spirit of bodhicitta can also be applied to how we relate to our own suffering. When we can bring this quality of awakened understanding and boundless compassion to our personal pain, our difficulties, our perceived flaws, we transform the very nature of our experience. Traditionally, we tend to view our suffering in isolation. We see it as a personal failing, a sign of our inadequacy, or a problem that needs to be fixed solely for our own benefit. When pain arises, the ego often whispers, "This is happening to me, and it's a terrible thing." This narrow, self-centered view of suffering amplifies its intensity and makes it harder to bear. Seeing your suffering with bodhicitta means first recognizing the universality of suffering. It means understanding that every sentient being, without exception, experiences pain, loss, and dissatisfaction. This realization dissolves the sense of isolation and self-pity that often accompany our personal struggles. When we understand that our pain is not unique, but a shared human experience, it becomes less about my problem and more about the human condition. Secondly, bodhicitta involves bringing a quality of deep compassion to this shared suffering. Instead of judging ourselves for our pain, we offer ourselves the same kindness and understanding we would offer to a loved one who is suffering. We acknowledge the difficulty of the experience without trying to erase it or condemn ourselves for having it. We offer ourselves a gentle, loving presence. This practice is incredibly powerful because it shifts our relationship with our own suffering. When we approach our pain with the intention of alleviating it not just for ourselves, but for all beings who experience similar struggles, our perspective broadens. Our personal difficulties become a gateway to a deeper understanding of the world and a profound connection to others. The ego, of course, can resist this. It wants to keep the suffering contained within the boundaries of the individual self, to highlight its uniqueness and its perceived injustices. The ego fears that by sharing our suffering or by viewing it universally, we diminish its significance. But the truth is the opposite. By expanding our perspective through bodhicitta, we actually diminish the suffering associated with the pain, while increasing our capacity for wisdom and compassion. This means when we experience anxiety, we can see that countless beings also experience anxiety. When we feel disappointment, we recognize that disappointment is a universal human experience. And in this recognition, we can meet our own anxiety or disappointment with a gentler, more compassionate eye, understanding that we are not alone and that this is a natural part of being alive. Seeing your suffering with bodhicitta is not about ignoring the pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It is about transforming our relationship to it, moving from a position of resistance and isolation to one of compassion and universal interconnectedness. It is in this expansive view that we begin to touch upon the very essence of awakened awareness. And in the next section, we will explore a fundamental truth about this awareness. This very mind is Buddha. At the heart of Buddhist philosophy lies a profound and often counterintuitive assertion. This very mind, the mind that experiences the world, the mind that feels joy and sorrow, the mind that is right now processing these words. This mind in its fundamental nature is Buddha. It is not something we need to attain, or a state we need to reach through arduous effort. It is the inherent ground of our being, already present, already pure, already awakened. This concept is often called Buddha nature, the innate capacity for enlightenment that resides within all sentient beings. However, the teaching, "this very mind is Buddha," emphasizes the immediacy of this truth. It's not a future possibility, it's the present reality. The turbulent mind, the distracted mind, the mind filled with doubts, all of these are manifestations within the unchanging awareness that is, in its essence, Buddha. The misunderstanding that leads to suffering often stems from identifying with the temporary contents of the mind, the thoughts, emotions, and sensations, rather than with the underlying awareness that perceives them. We get caught in the story, the drama, the commentary, and we forget the vast, open space in which all of this is occurring. This space, this pure awareness, is the Buddha. The ego naturally resists this notion. The ego is built on the idea of separation, of being a distinct, individual entity that needs to strive to become, to fix. The idea that our fundamental nature is already perfect, already Buddha, challenges the ego's very existence and its narrative of struggle. The ego wants to be the one who achieves enlightenment, not the one who simply is that which is already enlightened. The practice, therefore, is not about transforming your mind into something it is not, but about recognizing what it already is. It's about letting go of the effort to fix, to control, or to perfect, and instead, gently turning towards the awareness that is already present. When we do this, the mental chatter, while it may continue, loses its grip. We begin to see that the thoughts are like clouds passing across a clear sky. The sky remains vast and unchanging, regardless of the clouds. This realization is not an intellectual understanding alone, it is an experiential one. It arises through practices like meditation, where we learn to witness our mental activity without identifying with it. As we practice, we can begin to sense the stillness, the clarity, the boundless nature of our own awareness. This is the glimpse of our Buddha nature. When we truly begin to grasp that this very mind is Buddha, it liberates us from the endless cycle of self-improvement and the pursuit of external validation. It means that our innate goodness, our capacity for wisdom and compassion, is not something we need to earn. It is our birthright. This understanding can be challenging because it goes against our conditioning. We are so used to seeing ourselves through the lens of the ego, through the lens of what's wrong, that realizing our inherent purity can feel foreign. Yet, it is precisely this realization that holds the key to lasting peace and freedom. And in this recognition, in this glimpse of our inherent Buddha nature, we realize that the path is not one of becoming something different, but one of fully embodying who we already are. To be you fully is the practice itself. And in the next section, we will explore this direct and simple path. To be you fully is the practice. In our relentless pursuit of self-improvement, we often get caught in the trap of trying to become someone else. We admire certain qualities in others, we chase ideals that are presented to us, and we fall into the trap of believing that the way to happiness and fulfillment lies in transforming ourselves into a different, supposedly better version of who we are. We think the practice is about achieving a perfect state, a finished product, but the profound simplicity of Buddhist practice, when understood deeply, reveals that the path to awakening and peace isn't about becoming someone you're not. It's about fully being who you already are. To be you fully, in all your unique radiance and all your perceived imperfections, that is the practice. This might sound remarkably easy, yet it is often the most challenging path we can take. It requires us to dismantle the ingrained habits of self-criticism, comparison, and the constant striving to meet external expectations. It asks us to release the masks and personas we wear, and to stand in the open space of our authentic being. When we strive to be someone else, or a perfected version of ourselves, we are always operating from a place of lack, from a belief that who we are right now is not enough. This creates a constant internal tension, a feeling of being incomplete, that fuels our anxieties and dissatisfactions. The ego loves this game of becoming because it keeps us perpetually striving and never truly arrived. But when we shift our focus to simply being, fully and authentically, we begin to experience a profound sense of peace and liberation. This doesn't mean ceasing all effort or abandoning our aspirations. Rather, it means approaching our lives from a foundation of self-acceptance. It means engaging with the world from the ground of our true nature, rather than from a place of trying to prove something or fix something. What does it mean to be you fully? It means acknowledging your unique thoughts and feelings without judgment, embracing your strengths and your vulnerabilities with equal grace, trusting your own inner wisdom and intuition. Connecting with others from an open, authentic heart without the need for approval, receiving life's experiences, both pleasant and unpleasant, with presence and acceptance. When we are fully present as ourselves, we realize that our uniqueness is not a flaw to be corrected, but a gift to be shared. Our individual perspective, our particular journey, is invaluable. When we stop comparing and start embracing our own authentic expression, we tap into a power that is far more potent and sustainable than anything the ego can conjure. This practice of simply being requires immense courage, especially in a world that often values achievement over presence and comparison over acceptance. It means challenging the deep-seated cultural and personal narratives that tell us we are not enough, that we must change to be worthy. The beauty of this approach is that it's not about striving for an unattainable ideal. It's about waking up to the reality of who you are right now. It's about realizing that the journey of awakening is not a destination to be reached, but the very way we walk the path, fully ourselves, fully present. And in this realization, we discover that the frantic search we've been engaged in has a surprising conclusion. The end of the search is actually the return to what was always here. And in the next section, we will explore this idea of the end of the search being the return. We spend so much of our lives searching for happiness, searching for meaning, searching for purpose, searching for love, searching for a sense of belonging, searching for ourselves. This search often feels like a relentless quest, an endless journey towards a destination that remains perpetually just out of reach. We look outwards, accumulating experiences, knowledge, possessions, relationships, all in the hope that one day we will finally find what we are looking for. But what if the very nature of this prolonged search is based on a misunderstanding? What if the thing we are so desperately seeking is not out there, waiting to be discovered, but has been here all along, obscured by the act of searching itself? Buddhist wisdom suggests that the end of the search is not a triumphant arrival at a new place, but a return to what was always present. This return is not about going back to a physical location or a past state. It is about recognizing our inherent nature, our true essence, which has always been present even amidst our searching. When we are caught in the act of searching, our attention is directed outwards, focused on what is missing, on what needs to be acquired. This outward focus creates a sense of separation, a feeling that we are somehow incomplete or lost. The ego thrives on this narrative of the search. It gains its sense of purpose from having a quest, a goal to strive for. If the search ends, if we realize we are already whole, then the ego's role as the relentless seeker is called into question. The practice of mindfulness is key to dissolving the illusion of the search. By gently bringing our attention back to the present moment, to the simple reality of our breath, our body, our senses, we begin to disengage from the external quest. We start to notice the ground beneath our feet, the air in our lungs, the awareness that is experiencing all of this. As we practice, we realize that the peace, the joy, the sense of belonging we were searching for are not qualities to be found in a distant future or a foreign land. They are already inherent in the present moment, in the aware presence of our own being. The searching mind, the one that believes something is missing, is the very thing that keeps us from recognizing what is already here. When we stop searching, we stop creating an artificial divide between ourselves and the object of our search. We realize that we are not separate from happiness, or from meaning, or from our true selves. We are, in essence, already these things. The end of the search is the dawning realization of this inherent completeness. This can feel liberating, but also perhaps disconcerting. The energy invested in the search can feel wasted, or worse, the realization that it was never necessary can bring up feelings of regret. Yet the journey of searching often serves to eventually exhaust the ego's strategies, creating the space for this profound return. The return is an awakening to the simple, profound reality of our own presence. It is realizing that we were never truly lost. We were just mistakenly looking outwards when the answer was always within. And this understanding brings us to a final, most fundamental truth. Your nature is basic goodness, and in the next section, we will explore this foundational principle. In a world that so often emphasizes our flaws, our shortcomings, and the negative aspects of human nature, it can be challenging to truly embrace the idea that our fundamental essence, our very nature, is characterized by basic goodness. We are conditioned to believe that goodness is something we must strive for, something we earn through effort and adherence to moral codes. We see ourselves as inherently flawed, needing constant repair and improvement. But Buddhist teachings, particularly the concept of Buddha nature and the innate purity of mind, point to a far more optimistic and liberating truth. Your nature is basic goodness. This means that at our core, beneath the layers of ego, conditioning, and learned behaviors, lies an inherent capacity for kindness, compassion, wisdom, and peace. This is not a quality to be achieved, but a fundamental reality to be recognized. Think of pure water. Even when stirred up, when muddied, the water itself remains pure. It is only the impurities that obscure its clarity. Similarly, our true nature is pure awareness, inherently good. The impurities are the negative thoughts, the habitual reactions, the egoic constructs that we can mistakenly identify with. These obscurations do not change the fundamental purity of our being. This understanding is not about encouraging complacency or excusing negative behavior. Rather, it is about shifting our foundation. Instead of starting from a place of perceived deficiency, we start from a place of inherent worth and goodness. When we recognize our basic goodness, we are naturally inclined towards kindness, compassion, and wisdom, not because we have to force ourselves, but because these qualities are intrinsic to our true nature. The ego, of course, often resists this idea. The ego thrives on the narrative of struggle, of inferiority, of needing to become something more. The idea of basic goodness can feel too simple, too effortless, too counter to its own self-image. It prefers the drama of the flawed individual striving for redemption. When we begin to access this recognition of our basic goodness, it changes how we relate to ourselves and to others. We become more forgiving of our own mistakes and more compassionate towards the struggles of others, understanding that their obscurations also do not change their fundamental goodness. This fosters a deep sense of interconnectedness and acceptance. Practicing mindfulness, meditation, and cultivating compassionate awareness are all ways to gently clear away the obscurations that prevent us from seeing our inherent goodness. It's like cleaning the lens of a camera so that the light can shine through clearly. This recognition of basic goodness is not a final destination, but a starting point for authentic unfolding. It is the fertile ground from which all positive qualities can grow naturally. It means that even in moments of anger, fear, or confusion, the underlying stream of goodness remains. Ultimately, the wisdom traditions offer a profound message of hope. You are not inherently bad or broken. Your true nature is one of pure, unconditioned goodness. The journey of spiritual practice is not to change who you are at your core, but to realize and express the goodness that has always been present within you. Make sure to subscribe for more Buddhist wisdom and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next teaching. Until then, stay present, stay peaceful, and we'll see you in the next one.